Mexican cartels using
South Carolina Senator Tim Scott was on the campaign trail last week after announcing he was jumping into the 2024 presidential race with his announcement in North Charleston on May 22nd. Welcome to a This Week in South Carolina special report. I'm Gavin Jackson in Sioux City, Iowa, where Senator Tim Scott is making his first swing as a declared Republican presidential candidate here in the Hawkeye State. And we tagged along with him at several visits.
I love Iowa. It's been great. I've been back since I guess it's 2015 when I started coming first for Senator Grassley. I got to know the state. Been here about 15 times since then, so it's fun to come back to a place that's starting to feel more and more like home. So people are wonderful, friendly, and frankly, the governor of the state has done a fabulous job. It has been my signature issue since I started my opportunity agenda, which is focusing on education. That education is the closest thing to magic, and to be in a state where the governor celebrates that, I think is fantastic. Knowing that this school has perhaps doubled in size because of the new student scholarships is such a blessing to the future of this country, the future of the state, to see a state that's investing so heavily in their kids. So that's a good thing.
Scott first visited a private Christian school in the Republican stronghold northwest portion of the state that's on the banks of the Missouri River and borders Nebraska as well as South Dakota. Scott met with school officials as he continues his push for school choice in a state where Governor Kim Reynolds has signed legislation into law this past year to use taxpayer dollars to fund vouchers for students to attend private schools. Governor Henry McMaster has signed a similar law as well.
Yeah, so I think a nationwide problem right now is teacher shortages, whether you're public or you're private. Can you talk a little bit about your plan for recruitment and retention of teachers?
Absolutely. So, one of the things that we should do is I guess I have a bifurcate the question. Part of it would be on looking at the areas of high needs. So your rural communities where it's harder to attract teachers, I think there are lots of things that we can do and should do. We can accelerate the path of reducing student loan burdens, not as President Biden would do it at this point, which is canceling the debt, but having an incentive-based approach, which says that you're going to teach in areas, if you're willing to teach in areas where the need is the highest, that we should provide more resources. The second thing that I see that I'm watching and modeling, there are some really great examples around the country. Success Academy in New York City is a charter school program that is about, I think, 85 or 86% African-American Hispanic kids. $30,000 or so is the household income. And what I see happening in those areas is their kids are producing better test results than your majority students in New York City because they have the resources necessary to make a difference. And the resources, 50 cents on the dollar in the state. But what you see happening is that they have donors and others who are providing incentives. So one of the things I thought to myself is that we have a school in Charleston called Meeting Street Academies that actually pays incentives to teachers for test scores and better results. I would love to have a matrix that we can design to help to create the kind of results we need for the kids and compensate teachers accordingly. And so retention becomes less of an issue long term. I also think that you provide more student loan forgiveness and you try to create an apparatus on the federal level that we're incentivizing teacher performance on the federal level. Most of the decisions on resources will come from the state and the local level, as it should. But the federal government spends about $70 or $80 billion on K-12 education. The local government spends about $700 billion. And so one of the things I like to do is get a big pair of scissors and start cutting some of the red tape that says, here's what you must do in order to get our resources, even though we provide 10 cents on the dollar.
Sure.
And so the fewer restrictions that you have on how you use the dollars, the better off you are. Some of the things I've heard from superintendents around the country is that the COVID money that went out, it sits on a balance sheet because all the strings attached to spending the money makes it not worth spending it because you're obligating yourself to continuing programs that are more costly than the money that you get initially. And so they didn't spend the money. And so I think those are just a couple of ways I would try to tackle some of the shortages that we have today.
One issue we're not hearing a lot of Republican candidates talk about on the campaign trail is abortion, and Senator Scott is no different. Though I did ask him at the event what he thought of the 6-week abortion ban bill that the South Carolina legislature passed off to the governor for his signature.
Any reaction to the 6-week ban being passed in South Carolina?
Thank you very much, guys.
No, not really. I mean, I think the state is trying to protect the culture of life, and that's good news. I mean, I think the heartbeat bill is a step in the direction of that. But
thank you guys very much.
Thanks, Senator.
Thank you.
Senator Scott held his first town hall here in Sioux City at Novelty Machine and Supply Company, and he shared his life story while also taking a few questions from folks that are evaluating a growing field of Republican presidential candidates ahead of the First of the Nation caucuses next year.
Since you brought it up with the view, the boo, the poo, whatever you want to call it,
Yes.
Miss Joy Behar brought up something. You don't know what racism is in America. You don't know what's like being black in America. Are you kidding me?
She's kidding me.
Yeah, are
Yes.
you serious? I mean, how do you respond to that? I mean,
Well,
come on.
Listen, I've tried to be as clear as I can be. I don't even need the stool anymore. You got me fired up here. So let me just say the truth here. I say this with all sincerity. A white lady telling a black man, I don't understand what it means to be black in America. It's not preposterous. It's not ridiculous. It's insane. It just is. I said this in 2021 when I responded to President Biden for the first time, my first major speech to the nation. I said, I have been discriminated against. I understand the pain and the challenges that come with discrimination. I don't hide away from that. But at the same time, I refuse to allow the minority of my experiences to color my picture. And it's one of the reasons why I said, after I said I had been discriminated against, I said America is not a racist country. Because it's not. But here is the emerging prejudice I see in America. It's the liberal elite, black and white, that wants to tell me to stay in my place. That's discrimination. You want to talk about prejudice? The future of this country will not be determined by black or white. It will be determined by the quality of our education. Those same liberal elites trap poor kids in failing schools because they're wedded to big labor unions. They're more interested in keeping those kids trapped in their schools and trapped out of their futures. And they're going to talk about the great opportunity party. Give a brother a break.
First of all, I'm looking at all the candidates. I'm vetting every single presidential candidate that's come through Iowa. But I really am looking for a candidate that has some chutzpah. I want a conservative. I want somebody who can stand up to the Washington, D.C. mess. I feel that we are in a managerial government. I don't like it. I really would like to see some leadership. I like Tim Scott a lot. I was excited about coming to see him.
Yes, so you're talking about change, you're wanting to see some different things. Does he offer that message in your opinion? I guess you're evaluating everyone right now at this
That's
stage.
right. What I see or have heard from Tim Scott so far, and I've seen him a couple different events way before this election cycle, but that man he believes in America. He believes in the American dream. He's well-founded in faith, and he knows how to pick himself up by the bootstraps. He wants everybody to do that. I really like his message.
I'm not sure. I mean, I was a Trump supporter, and I'm not saying I won't support him again, but I'm also kind of thinking it might be time for the next generation to come in. And who that is, I don't know. I'm listening to everybody right now.
When you talk about being a Trump supporter, what were some of the issues that you've had with the president right now? Is it because he has a lot of baggage right now, or different people are saying different things that are sticking out to you, or what are your thoughts on that?
I'm not sure if he'll be elected again, and it's kind of like I'm tired of the noise. I really liked him. I thought he was an excellent president. I think he did not get a fair shake. I really believe all those things. Did he win? Did he lose? Well, he lost the election, but I don't get into all of that. I'm looking at let's go forward. And I think that's the problem, is that no matter what he does, people are going to try to pull him back. They're going to keep talking about the past, and I don't know how we get forward. But I won't say I'm not voting for him because I don't know yet.
While many Iowans are still learning about who the junior senator from South Carolina is, they'll be hearing his name a lot over the coming weeks and months leading up to the August debate. That's thanks in part to a $6 million ad buy on the airwaves here in Iowa and New Hampshire.
I'm living proof that America is the land of opportunity. I was raised by a single mother in poverty. She taught me to have stubborn faith. Faith in God, faith in ourselves, and faith in America.
While in Iowa, I also spent time talking to Tom Beaumont. He's an Iowa-based Associated Press reporter who's covered several presidential campaigns before and is also closely watching the 2024 race. He shared with me what makes Iowa so unique and important.
The state has changed a lot, actually. This is a state that Obama carried twice in the general election. He won the caucuses in 2008 en route to the presidency, and 8 years later, Donald Trump carried Iowa and carried it again in 2020. So it went from an Obama state to a Trump state very quickly.
And then what does that signify, I guess? How does that shift happen? What drove that shift in your opinion?
Man, you're geeking me out here, because a lot of people think that it was like a rise in strength of the Republicans, but it was more a withering of the Democratic base. Democratic base in Iowa used to be rural progressives, urban and suburban liberals, and a really strong union base. Down the Mississippi River, manufacturing towns from Dubuque down south. They used to build farm implements. UAW was huge here. And between the early 2000s and now, the manufacturing base has dwindled, and with it has gone the union base. So there are no more rural progressives. All of those farms have sold and have become, corporate farms. And so there aren't those like small farm rural progressives anymore, and there are very few labor Democrats. So it's dwindled. Now you have a state where a Democrat has not been elected statewide since Tom Harkin won re-election for the last time in 2008.
I asked Tom what Tim Scott needs to do to win Iowa and whether he thinks Iowans know who he is.
Well, I don't think Iowans know him at all, but he presents quite differently than the rest of this emerging field. He obviously presents differently than Trump and DeSantis. Senator Scott is really distinguishing himself by coming across as very optimistic, future forward, we can do this together, tells his story, his, compelling personal narrative. It's really upbeat. And what you do hear from Trump and DeSantis more, and to a lesser extent the rest of the field, is kind of, just a pummeling of the liberal left, And that seems to be how Scott is trying to distinguish himself.
Is that what Iowans want to hear? Are they reacting to that, kind of jumping on the whole cultural war bandwagon? I mean, it seems like that's the drumbeat and that's what the polls show.
I don't know, we'll see, because you make the interesting point of what polls show, and there are no good Iowa polls yet. I mean, this is where it starts. This is where the whole thing starts to gel, and it's not going to gel for months. I mean, we don't even have a full-fledged, DeSantis campaign yet. Tim Scott's making his first, his first trip here as a candidate. There's so much that needs to be sorted out first. Mike Pence hasn't said what he's going to do. I mean, the field isn't fully formed yet. So it's just going to take a while for what we see in national polls to have some sort of context on the ground in Iowa.
You just did some reporting about organizing and what it takes to organize in this place like Iowa, because it isn't primaries, it's caucusing.
Yeah.
It's just so different.
Right.
It requires a lot of face-to-face, handshaking, a lot of pressing the flesh, and organizing too. It sounds like, DeSantis is already putting a lot of money behind that. Someone like Tim Scott's putting a lot of money behind advertising. Do you have to do, I guess, a little bit of both? Are there different tacks or ways to approach this, and is one better than the other?
They kind of have to go hand in hand, but organizing is always, people say you really got to organize to get those people out to those evening meetings in the dead of winter. That's if you have something to catch. That's if you have a candidate with momentum to actually catch that momentum. If you're organized to the hilt and nobody is interested in what you're selling, that's not going to do you any good. I come back to the Obama campaign. They were really smart. They built out this huge organization, had crowds at their events, filtered through all the people that were attending, got their information, and then he got hot. And so they had an apparatus to catch his momentum. In 2016, Trump did not have an apparatus to catch what was his momentum. They left a lot of votes on the floor because they weren't following up on people that were showing up at their events and demonstrating interest. And so they finished second. They're doing it different this time. It's hard to be new twice, so we'll see. But Tim Scott does not have that problem because he is new now and he presents differently.
Senator Scott also visited the second early voting state on the presidential nominating calendar here in New Hampshire. He spoke at St. Anselm's College, New Hampshire Institute of Politics, before a group of female Republicans about his vision for America.
I kind of believe that the good Lord in his infinite wisdom allowed me to have a miserable start so that when I look back and then I look forward in our nation, I understand the misery uniquely that comes with broken pieces and a broken family and a broken heart. Putting those together for our nation is my responsibility so that I don't waste any pain in my life. It serves as a purpose for my future, and I hope in many ways for the future of this country. He said, you may see the pain of your present, but it may reveal the purpose of your future. And so I've taken those and tried to craft an opportunity agenda where we talk about the importance of school choice so that every parent has a choice, every child has a chance. Talk about restoring confidence in the American people by giving you your money back through tax reform. Talk about securing our southern border so that 70,000 fewer Americans die from fentanyl overdoses. Things that we can do to make America stronger and more resilient, starting at home, but also abroad. We should secure our future through excavating energy here at home and continue to have an all of the above strategy on our energy policies. If I was president of the United States, and hopefully I will be in just less than 2 years, I would make my first day signing the XL Keystone Pipeline to finish the process that we delayed under President Biden.
I spoke with some of those in the audience about Senator Scott's message and their thoughts on who should be the next president.
I find Senator Scott to be very inspirational, and I see him as a person of faith, and I think faith is going to carry us through in these hard times that our country is experiencing right now. And he's a man with strength, and he carries that armor of God on him all the time, and I think he's refreshing. We need a refreshing look. We need a refreshing face, somebody that really is sincere, and I feel he's really sincere.
I really liked a lot his manners. He's such a man, he's a gentleman. You don't see this often, Every candidate, he wants to show he's powerful, he can do changes, But I like his softness because it's a little bit different, and I like how he treats women.
As far as the field right now, I don't think there's anybody I would totally dismiss. Any candidate that is the Republican nomination for president, I will be voting for. As far as who it's going to be right now, I don't know who I'm leaning towards. I really don't have you want that. And, Tim Scott's great, but I just heard him, so he's my guy. So who I go see tomorrow might be my guy, So that's what happens is, you get the emotional thing, but you got to come down to the facts. The facts matter. Not just what you feel about it, and how great they look. I know Tim keeps saying he's not the best looking guy in the family or whatever, but he's a riot. So anyway, so I am looking for someone who believes in the Constitution, believes in God, believes in our country, believes that the people should be working for their living and not just taking a handout. I want people that love our country to be in charge of our country, not, giving it away for free.
I also spoke with the New Hampshire Institute of Politics Executive Director Neil Levick about what makes New Hampshire politics so unique and what it takes to win the Granite State.
Well, there's other states too that have had, early primaries or caucuses and things. But the reason why New Hampshire is really important is that New Hampshire really vets candidates. You have to come into this state and meet with voters, take their questions, take their follow-up questions. And it's not a state where a big endorsement carries any weight whatsoever. And it's not a state where money buys votes. And tragically, across the country today, if you raise a lot of money, that equals the fact that you're going to win that state. Not so in New Hampshire. You have to campaign here, and really what it does is it makes you a better candidate. It produces a better candidate for the parties, because if you're a member of a party, you want to have the strongest candidate to go forward to a general election.
Mm-hmm. So have we changed, or have candidates just adapted when we look at how Donald Trump has affected races going forward, specifically 2024? Are we seeing folks trying to become the next Donald Trump, but maybe a lighter version like a DeSantis? Or, what about a guy like Senator Tim Scott, who's really trying to play that good guy card and be, uniting and trying to be optimistic? Can you even do something like that in 2024?
Absolutely, and I think presidential elections always evolve and change. And so you always see, particularly in general elections, where, you go from somebody like Nixon to Carter, two different types of personalities. And then Carter, who's wearing a sweater and lowering the heat, to the glitz of the Hollywood star of Ronald Reagan. So you do have these switches back and forth. And I think that we'll probably see that again. I think what people always forget, and particularly political scientists always try to put people in lanes. But when you ask regular voters who they like and who they want to vote for, it's really who they like. And a lot of that has to do with raw political talent, which is always overlooked. Who's really good on the stump? Who can make a good communication speech? Who's likable? And people forget that, particularly political scientists or pollsters who are looking at this stuff. And so we always forget that, but you take a candidate like a Bill Clinton from a small state, no one's ever heard of him, but he had raw political talent. And that's what really did it for him.
And we see that play out in Iowa and New Hampshire and obviously South Carolina there. So just with that being said there, Neil, what's it take to win a place like New Hampshire versus a place like South Carolina? Kind of give us a little idea about the politics in New Hampshire for folks that don't know New Hampshire politics.
Well, I think South Carolina is all about endorsements. So if you get the Clyburn endorsement, for example, like Biden did, you'll win South Carolina. That's what they are betting on. There's also more of a religious tone to South Carolina elections, I believe. New Hampshire is one of the most agnostic states in the nation. So campaigning on a heavily religious sort of background has not necessarily worked in New Hampshire. It's a different kind of thing than in the South and places like South Carolina. I think the main thing in New Hampshire is you got to go out, you got to show up. You got to take the questions. You got to show that you're authentic, but you got to show that you're ready for the job, and they're going to be fighting for people here in New Hampshire. And so that could be a Bernie Sanders who really was authentic to the voters. They liked him. They thought that he was fighting for them at all times. Or it could be a John McCain type of candidate. Same type of voter will vote for each one of those people.
And just last question, when you look at this race right now, when you look at historic perspective, how do you see this race for the Republican field kind of fitting with what we saw in 2016 and prior races? I mean, are we on track to see a repeat in a sense, or, what do you think we've learned from 2016, what we're doing right now in 2024?
Well, the problem with comparing presidential elections is there's really not enough of a pool, and things change so much. But what do we have right now? We really have an incumbent Republican, too. He's the former president, so he's sort of like an incumbent. And the strange phenomena is that people that worked for him or served with him on the ticket are either in the race or going to be on the race. That is a strange situation. It's like the team of rivals all got together now and they're all rivaling again. So that is a strange thing, because when they say, well, we signed a bill on this, well, who are they talking about? The person on this part of the debate stage or the person on this one? So it's a strange situation for sure. It would be interesting to see who can sort of overcome that incumbency that Trump has with the party, that I think is the most difficult challenge. And I haven't seen that anyone really has, I'll boil this down to chicken tenders, but no one has the secret sauce yet to figure that out. And what we've seen in the polling is a seesaw effect with like DeSantis, where he's been slowly dropping and Trump's been slowly growing up. And really, some of these other candidates haven't really taken off yet. There is the variable of time, though.
The road to the White House in 2024 runs right through Iowa, New Hampshire, and South Carolina. And we'll be covering our two homegrown candidates as they hit the trail and the ever-growing Republican presidential candidate field as they visit South Carolina. You can stay up to date by following the South Carolina Lead podcast that I host on Tuesdays and Saturdays on southcarolinapublicradio.org or wherever you find podcasts. For South Carolina ETV, I'm Gavin Jackson in Manchester, New Hampshire. Be well, South Carolina.